Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 3, Stress Week. We are over halfway through with the program. Woohoo! I hope you are enjoying, and I'm starting to see some great results reported from people in terms of weight loss, in terms of lower inflammation levels, in terms of better sleep, and just honestly feeling better. So as I've mentioned, this is not a diet program. This is a lifestyle program. So yes, you may have vacations and holidays and all that kind of stuff. We all do. But guess what? Just jump right back in. So don't let those things derail you permanently. Keep coming back to it time and time again, and you're learning a bunch of things just beyond food. And so today we're going to deep dive into stress, which is one of my favorite topics. So let me share my screen with you and we can jump right in and get into the nitty gritty. So here we go. I am going to turn this into presentation mode and we are off. So if 2020 wasn't stressful for you, I have no idea what planet you were living in. Holy cow. I mean, I had to pull out every tool in the tool belt, and I have a lot in terms of dealing with stress. So kudos to you if you were able to manage it without losing it occasionally. And if you did, it's okay. We all understand at this point. But I want you to understand just the implications of stress and aging. First of all, 75 to 90% of all doctor visits are stress related. 90%. And the top 6 reasons for mortality, stress is implicated heavily in all 6. So wow, it's important to understand that chronic stress equals chronic inflammation equals something called inflammaging, the aging of our body more rapidly than it should be. So inflammaging, that's a term that is now kind of commonplace and we need to understand it. So today we're going to understand stress and how it implicates the body, its role on the body, both internal and external stressors, and what we do to combat the daily stress we are under. Mental health equals physical health, 100% in my eyes. So there's a few things that make us susceptible to stress. First of all, there is a genetic component. So if you have the gene I mentioned here, RBFOX1, yes, you might have more propensity to have something called generalized anxiety disorder. And then your cells, there's something in terms of your receptors and your genetics. So I had something when I had my genetic testing done that showed that I was more susceptible to dopamine. And there's dopamine and serotonin and GABA and all these neurotransmitters that help us modulate stress. So yes, we can be genetically more susceptible to have more of those receptors or less of those receptors. So that's important to understand there is a genetic component. But again, what I said about genetics is it can be the gun, but we need the lifestyle to trigger it. So that's important. What kind of coping style do you have? Are you more of a stoic person? My husband is the ultimate stoic, and he reads about stoicism a lot, so I hear about it all the time, and I have studied it myself. But it just means you're able to kind of take in the stress and modulate it on your own with coping mechanisms. Or are you much more reactive personality? And I think a lot of that is just personality by nature. Do you have a great support system built in? Family, friends, therapists, all of those are needed to help cope with stress. And finally, what kind of personality are you? I always think of there's that New Yorker that is just always amped up and always ready to kind of go, go, go. But then there's the, Californian. So I think of the SNL skit where they have the Californians and they're super laid back. Hey, I'm chill, dude. So what kind of personality are you naturally? And are you type A or are you more laid back? Those things all come into play in terms of your susceptibility to stress. But then, I just want you to understand how stress comes to fruition within the body. So the image that you will see shows just the numerous way that stress impacts the body. It's very important to understand that all of those things can be stress related. The ones I wanted to pull out in particular right now, immune system health. That's so important right now, as we know. So things like, the implications of stress on things like T cells and natural killer cells. So those are the cells that go out and kind of search out the invaders and kind of work to destroy the invaders in our systems, viruses and bacteria. Those are implicated. When we're high stress, those aren't as effective. Also, did you know that stress can totally deplete your body of vitamin C? So you're burning through vitamin C if you are in a chronic stressed out state. So it's important to supplement that vitamin C if you are living in a stressed out state, in my eyes. It also can increase histamine, which creates an inflammatory reaction within the respiratory system. So those are things we all want to consider when we're living in a stressed out state. Yes, it will impact your immune system. It'll also increase insulin levels. So that's another thing people don't understand. People could have high blood sugar and they could not be eating any sugar at all because of their stress states, because stress comes from the hormone cortisol, which is a glucocorticoid hormone. So if you hear the word glucose into that, it's directly tied to blood sugar. Elevating your blood sugar without eating any blood sugar and living in that chronic high blood sugar state does a lot of detriment to your body. So it's important to understand that. Next, it can be obviously detrimental to your stomach in terms of, you've heard of ulcers, but also kind of creating that dysbiosis. So it feeds that bad bacteria in your gut and diminishes the good bacteria. And gut is the home, as we've talked about, hormones, your immune health. A lot of that is centered in your gut. So it's very paramount to keep that gut healthy. We had increased risk of heart disease with plaque, and that is also tied to blood sugar. And then finally, the link between chronic stress and tumor development. There's a lot of studies on this, hasn't definitively been proven, but in my eyes, and I am not a doctor, nor am I claiming to be one for this program, but I do feel that, many times when people have stressful events in their lives, it leads to later disease and illness. So, we've heard a lot of stories about that anecdotally, but I 100% believe that to be the truth. So the shape of stress, I'm going to talk about this two different ways. First of all, how stress manifests in your body, both internally and externally. So internally, we have, our emotions, fears, beliefs, all of those things can create this ongoing fear and state when things aren't really happening. Like, I love the statement, like, worry is a waste of imagination. Yes, do I worry? Yes, I do. But I try to be realistic about what my worries are and try and stay in the present moment. Illness creates a lot of internal inflammation and stress on the body, and lack of sleep the same way. And then we have our external stressors. So nutrition, of course, I'm going to put that on the top of the list. When you're eating a poor diet that's devoid of nutrients and very inflammatory, that will be stressful on the body. But then there's, the outside factors of smoking, chemicals, pollution, excessive EMF, which is their Wi-Fi signals. That's why I said I don't like to wear wearables at night, and I try to kind of, turn off the Wi-Fi signal when I can, because I do feel that has an influence on us. UV light, X-ray exposure. Then we have the things like that are sometimes hard to control. Yes, we might have a life event, a death, an illness in the family, work-related stress, some kind of change like a move, that is all going to create stress. So that's, the shape of stress. Yes, we have internal and external stressors, but then the shape of stress, actually, in terms of our two main hormones I like to think about. So cortisol, which is, like, again, that's secreted from the adrenal glands. It is your stress hormone. We need it in acute states of stress, but a lot of people have it's stuck kind of in permanent mode. And then melatonin, which is our sleepy time kind of hormone. So this is kind of how this graphic depicts how cortisol and melatonin should kind of have this inverse relationship. So in the morning, we do want high levels of stress. I mean, not of stress, but of cortisol to get us out of bed. Otherwise, we'd want to sleep all day. And a lot of people I know do feel like that because their cortisol is out of whack. And in the evening, we want cortisol to be low and melatonin to be high. Unfortunately, in today's world, I see that often those two are reversed, where we'll have melatonin high in the morning and low at night, and cortisol high at night. And that creates that tired but wired feeling, which is what we want to avoid. So we want to make sure we're having that that melatonin, cortisol natural rhythm. And how do we do that? By managing our stress, by, we'll talk more about circadian rhythms during sleep week, but those are important things to note. So what can we do? So first of all, there's something called vagal tone, excuse me. The vagus nerve actually is our 10th cranial nerve, and it runs from our, from our head down through our gut. And that's, like that gut feeling stress, yes, can be felt in the gut because of this vagus nerve. So we need to improve our vagal tone. It's one of the most critical things in terms of managing our stress and putting us into something called the parasympathetic state, which I'm going to touch on. But how do we do that? Things like diaphragmatic breathing, doing box breathing, maybe where we breathe in for 4, hold for 6, out for 7, just some kind of regular breathing. Breathing exercises, if you have a wearable, can do amazing things of slowing down your heart rate and being more connected. So I strongly promote that you take a few different minutes throughout the day to do some breathing exercises. I often do it actually as I'm falling asleep. I will do some box breathing as well. Cold thermogenesis, I'm not going to dive deep into this because I talk about it in my post on something called hormesis, but cold exposure, developing cold shock proteins, can actually modulate stress. Massage, reflexology, meditation, we're going to dive deep on that on Wednesday with my friend Leah from Salternative Spa. Been doing meditation myself for 8 years, and it's one of those things that, people say, like, well, is it a game changer? Yes, it is, but it's so not pronounced. Like, I mean, over the 8 years, it's been such a general, I think, improvement for me that my reaction to things and my ability to kind of modulate stress on my own. I used to be one of those people that was very reactive, and now I can take it all in and kind of process mostly. Am I perfect on it? Absolutely not. But I do meditate regularly and feel it's a game changer in my eyes. Chanting, singing, humming, gargling, that also activates this vagus nerve. So those are all the things to kind of put that vagus nerve, which is critical to modulating stress, into that parasympathetic state. Yoga, we're going to talk a little bit more about yoga this week too. There are certain types that are meant to specifically work on that stress modulation. So things like restorative yoga, hatha yoga, yoga nidra, and yin yoga. I actually spent all winter last year going to a yoga nidra class once a week, and it was one of my favorite things to do. It, like, my sleep scores on those nights that I did yoga nidra, which is basically yogic sleep, were amazing, and I loved it. We did it in an assault room. It was quiet. It was beautiful and peaceful. So I strongly promote doing something practice like that, especially if you suffer from extreme stress or insomnia. Sound healing, I've done a little bit of that, just listening to percussive instruments, and it's supposed to, again, put you in that meditative state. So I'm going to explain the graphic a little bit because it is important to understand the autonomic nervous system in terms of stress. So we have our sympathetic state, our fight or flight, and then we have parasympathetic, our rest and digest. Autonomic just means that's our automatic nervous system. We're not thinking about our heart rate. We're not doing anything about it. It just happens naturally. So, the aspects under the sympathetic are some of the things that happen during when you're in that fight or flight state. So things like your heart races, we know that your blood sugar increases, bladder relaxes. So some people, you've seen an extreme fright, urinate on themselves, believe it or not. But, those things are all connected to being in that sympathetic state. We want to be able to switch from that sympathetic state and acute stressor over to that parasympathetic state pretty easily. So your pupil contracts, you have that constriction of airways, your decreased heart rate. And a big thing is that your digestion power increases, because when you're in a stressed out state, all the blood rushes away from your digestive system, goes into your limbs, so you can run away from the system. But when you situation, but when you're in that parasympathetic state, you can focus on, again, resting and digesting and healing. So we want to again be able to switch between those states. But I feel like in today's environment, so many of us are kind of chronically stuck in that sympathetic state. And it's not doing us any harm because of the things that are listed there. So it's okay short term, but in the long term, we need to be able to, switch into that more parasympathetic state. And using the tools that I mentioned here are ways to do that. So continued on how other tools that we can do this. Increasing heart rate variability, HRV. So that is something that I actually do track on with my Aura ring. It is the distance between heartbeats. And most people would assume that they want a lower HRV, but you actually want a higher HRV. It just shows that you can tolerate more stress and put yourself back into a more relaxed state fairly quickly. So I have found, and I love to do experiments like this. Like, so if I have a late night meal, my HRV score will not be so good. If I have 2 glasses of wine, my HRV score will not be so good. It's also a great indicator for smart training. So some days my my Aura ring will tell me maybe my readiness score is not so high because my HRV was not good that night. So again, there's things we can do to improve our HRV. And I think breathing is a fantastic one here, meditation, and those kind of approaches to managing heart rate variability. And yes, many devices now track that. Biofeedback. Again, we're going to get more into devices in a post that I have during the week, but that is something where you're connected to a device and you can actually see how your heart rate and HRV respond to different things like meditation, breathing, and relaxation exercises. So it's kind of using a device to measure those and giving yourself feedback on those practices. Focusing on gut health. As I said, we want to make sure that our gut is healthy because of all the hormones that are produced in your gut. And that's serotonin, your feel good neurotransmitter. 90% of that is produced in the gut. So when you're in a stressed out state, you're probably going to be suffering from anxiety and depression. So I do have a lot of people that I work with, come to me with anxiety and depression. And simply by putting them on, my protocol, they start feeling better. And I'm not treating them for depression or anxiety, but I'm taking away a lot of their inflammation, giving them the tools to cope with stress, getting them sleeping, getting them moving. All those things have a huge implication on gut health and therefore hormonal health. Adaptogens. These are things that help you adapt to stress, and these are all herbals. So I've used literally every single one of them listed there. I find that probably the best is ashwagandha in terms of me, but everybody is different. And those are things that you'll probably need to, have a conversation with your doctor about. And especially if you're on thyroid meds and ashwagandha, there's some implications there. So, but holy basil, rhodiola, astragalus, all of those are great at modulating stress. Community and purpose. Again, a note from the blue zones. Those are the people that are so connected to their community and finding purpose. And again, whether their purpose is helping their neighbor, that can be profound. But these people do a lot in terms of community and purpose and help them modulate stress. So those are communities I think we all should look to as examples of kind of trying to lift ourselves up and live those way. And then there's something called hormesis, which is actually good stress. I'm going to do a post on that because I think there's so much to be learned about something called hormesis, again, hormetic stressors, such as cold exposure, such as exercise, such as eating wild and organic fruits and vegetables. All of these put just a small amounts of stress on our body to help us gain resiliency. And so it's actually a good thing. So I'm going to do a post on that because I think it's fascinating, and that's kind of the good side of stress. So I'm going to leave you with this kind of acronym that I came across last year at some point that I've kind of said to myself numerous times. It's not created by me. It's from Deepak Chopra. But when you're in a stressful situation, try as much as you can to remove yourself, kind of view yourself in this situation. I like to picture myself looking over my shoulders from outside and tell yourself just to stop. So, first of all, S stands for stop, or it could stay, in my mind, I always say stand tall. Take 3 deep breaths, observe, and I always say open your mind, and then proceed in love and kindness. So again, it's just not jumping in and reacting. It's trying to take those 3 breaths and think about the situation and know that it's temporary and that you're going to go through this. And the tools that I mentioned, a lot of those help you get there. So if you're a person that finds yourself jumping in and getting, really worked up and stressed out, try and say this acronym to yourself in that situation. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I look forward to spending the week with you talking all things stress. Please leave a comment, leave me a thumbs up. Let me know if you enjoyed the presentation. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you soon in the closed Facebook group. Take care. Have a good week. Bye.